Have you ever had someone look you in the eyes and tell you that you'd never survive without them? My husband did. He smiled while saying it, like it was an undeniable fact. He thought I would always stay because I had nowhere else to go. What he didn't know was that for the last 2 years, I'd been quietly preparing for the day I'd finally walk away. My name is Emma, and when I married Daniel, I believed we'd build a life together based on love and respect. For the first year, everything seemed perfect. We laughed over late-night dinners, dreamed about traveling, and talked about buying a little house with a garden someday. Then things slowly changed. It started with little comments that I brushed aside. Why do you need your own bank account? Married couples share everything. You don't really need to work full-time. I'll take care of you. I make enough money. Just let me handle the finances. At first, I thought he was trying to make life easier. I trusted him completely. So when he suggested combining our finances, I agreed. That was my first mistake. Within months, I no longer had access to our savings without asking him. Every purchase required an explanation. When I bought a $20 sweater, he asked why I was wasting money. When I met a friend for coffee, he wanted the receipt. When I suggested taking a weekend trip, he laughed and said I clearly didn't understand how expensive life was. Meanwhile, he spent thousands on new gadgets, golf clubs, and luxury watches without discussing any of it. Whenever I questioned the double standard, he always had the same answer. I earn more than you. After a while, I stopped arguing. Not because he was right, because I was exhausted. The emotional control grew stronger every year. He criticized my cooking. He mocked my career. He rolled his eyes whenever I celebrated a small achievement at work. If you really think that's impressive, he'd say, you have low standards. Eventually, I stopped telling him about promotions, bonuses, or compliments from my boss.
It was easier that way.
One evening, after I received an unexpected performance bonus, I made the mistake of mentioning it over dinner. Instead of congratulating me, Daniel reached across the table. Great, he said. He held out his hand. I'll deposit it. I stared at him. I thought I'd keep this one. His smile disappeared. Why? I earned it. He leaned back in his chair. Everything you earn belongs to this family. I looked around the kitchen that suddenly didn't feel like home anymore. Does everything you earn belong to us? His silence answered the question. That night, after he fell asleep, I opened my laptop. For hours, I researched financial independence, emergency savings, rental prices, and budgeting. By sunrise, I had a plan. Every overtime payment, every freelance project, every birthday check from relatives, every tax refund. I would quietly save it. Not in our shared account. In a completely separate account only I could access. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning freedom. The first few months were difficult. I accepted freelance work late at night after Daniel went to bed. I edited reports, designed presentations, proofread business documents. Sometimes I stayed awake until 2 a.m. just to earn another $100. Daniel never noticed. He assumed I was watching television or reading. Every paycheck, I secretly transferred a little more. $50, $100, sometimes $300. The balance grew slowly. Painfully slowly. Whenever I felt discouraged, I reminded myself that every dollar represented another step away from a life where someone else controlled every decision I made. Nearly 2 years passed. Then came the dinner that changed everything. Daniel had invited several friends over to celebrate his latest promotion. The conversation revolved around careers, investments, and success. One of his friends asked if I was thinking about applying for a management position at my company. Before I could answer, Daniel laughed. Emma? He shook his head. She'd never survive on her own. Everyone chuckled awkwardly. I forced a smile. He continued. Honestly, if I disappeared tomorrow, she'd be completely lost. More laughter. Then he looked directly at me. You need me to survive. Something inside me became very quiet. Not angry. Not emotional. Just certain. Because sitting in my purse, only a few feet away, was the statement for my private savings account. It contained enough money for a security deposit, 6 months of rent, furniture, moving expenses, and an emergency fund. For 2 years, I'd listened to every insult without revealing a single thing. And now the man who believed I couldn't live without him had absolutely no idea that I already could. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. Daniel was still asleep, completely unaware that his words from the night before had erased the last trace of doubt I had. I quietly packed a small suitcase, gathered my important documents, and slipped the envelope containing my savings statement into my bag. Before leaving, I placed my wedding ring on the kitchen counter beside a handwritten note. It read, "You said I needed you to survive. It's time we both learn the truth." I locked the door behind me without looking back. The apartment I rented wasn't luxurious. It had plain walls, second-hand furniture, and a tiny balcony overlooking a busy street. But when I unlocked that door for the first time, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years.
Peace.
Every item inside represented a decision I had made for myself. No permission. No criticism. No explanations. 3 hours later, my phone exploded with missed calls. Daniel, his mother, his sister, even friends who hadn't spoken to me in months. I ignored every call. Finally, a text appeared. "Where are you?" I answered with 4 simple words. "Exactly where I belong." His replies became increasingly desperate. "You'll come back. You can't afford this. Stop being dramatic." Then the message that made me laugh for the first time in years. "How are you even paying for this?" I never replied. Instead, I unpacked my clothes, made myself a cup of coffee, and watched the sunset from my little balcony. The following Monday, I threw myself into work. Without Daniel constantly undermining me, I discovered just how capable I really was. My manager noticed my confidence almost immediately and offered me the leadership position I'd been hesitant to pursue. This time, I accepted without asking anyone's opinion. Months passed. My savings continued to grow because every paycheck belonged to me. I furnished my apartment one room at a time. A bookshelf, a comfortable couch, fresh plants, little pieces of a life I had chosen. Meanwhile, mutual friends occasionally updated me on Daniel. Apparently, he told everyone I would eventually realize my mistake. He insisted I couldn't survive without him. Then reality caught up with him. He wasn't as financially responsible as he'd always claimed. Without my income quietly covering groceries, utilities, insurance, and countless household expenses, his budget began collapsing. The expensive watches stopped appearing. The luxury golf weekends disappeared. He sold one of his motorcycles. Then another. One afternoon, nearly 8 months after I left, he requested to meet. Curiosity got the better of me. We met at a quiet cafe. He looked older. Not because of time, but because confidence had finally given way to stress. After a few awkward moments, he sighed. "I didn't think you'd actually leave." "I know. I thought you needed me." I smiled politely. "You confused control with support." He stared into his coffee. "I made mistakes." "You did. I want another chance." I looked around the cafe before meeting his eyes. "I spent years hoping you'd become the husband I deserved." He nodded silently. "But while I was waiting, I became the woman I deserved." His shoulders slumped. There wasn't really anything left to say. As I stood to leave, he quietly asked one final question. "How long had you been planning this?" I paused. 2 years. His eyes widened. 2 years. "I stopped believing your words the day you tried to take my bonus." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I walked away. Outside, the afternoon sun felt warmer than I remembered. My phone buzzed. It was my manager. "I have good news," she said excitedly. "The executive team approved your proposal. We'd like you to lead the entire division." I laughed. "I'd love to." That evening, I celebrated alone with takeout and sparkling cider on my balcony. It wasn't lonely. It was freedom. Sometimes people ask whether I regret leaving. They assume ending a marriage must always feel like failure. But staying in a life built on fear would have been the real failure. Daniel believed survival meant depending on someone stronger. I learned survival means believing in yourself, even when someone else spends years convincing you that you can't. The account I secretly built over those 2 years wasn't just money. It was confidence, one deposit at a time. Every late-night freelance project. Every dollar carefully saved. Every quiet sacrifice. They weren't preparing me to escape. They were preparing me to remember who I had always been. The woman who could build her own future. The woman who never actually needed permission. The woman who finally understood that love should never come with conditions. Today, my apartment has become a home. My career continues to grow. I mentor young women entering the workplace, reminding them to value their independence and never surrender their voice to someone else's ego. Sometimes I still think about the sentence Daniel repeated for years. "You need me to survive." He was wrong. I never needed him. I only needed the courage to believe what he never wanted me to discover, that I had been strong enough all along.